artificial intelligence is remaking marketing as we speak. And if you're a marketer, you can either get up to speed or get left behind. The choice is yours, and really it's a no-brainer. Join Jeff Livingston and Greg Verdino as they explore the latest AI news, trends, tools, and ideas that are creating the future of marketing today. This is No Brainer, an AI podcast for marketers. Take it away, Jeff and Greg.
Welcome to the No Brainer podcast. It is an exciting day. We have Liza Adams with us, who is one of the 50 CMOs to watch in 2024. Obviously talks quite a bit about AI. Wouldn't be here if she didn't know what she was talking about. Strong CMO, minded professional, and was just quoted, I believe, in Forbes for an Apple Intelligence article. And we're going to talk a little bit about that at the end. But before I let Liza actually have a word in and maybe benefit you as opposed to having to listen to this crazy guy. A word about our sponsors really quickly. We really appreciate being a part of the Marketing Podcast Network. Thank you for listening. Please do patronize our sponsors. And then if you like this podcast, share it, like it, put a review down wherever you may find it. We really appreciate that. Share it with your colleagues. And if you have any insights or any kind of feedback you want to give us, please do send it to us. Also, my colleague Greg Verdino could not join us today, but does send you well wishes. Liza, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you so much, Jeff. It's always such a pleasure talking with you and now your listeners. Excited to be here.
We're thrilled to have you. I mean, obviously, we've been hearing quite a bit about you, and I think we end up in these cross-tagged posts, I think quite a bit, and you seem to be very well grounded in the AI community on LinkedIn. And I just want to ask you how you've seen everything evolve over the past year before we dive into some of our regularly scheduled programming.
I am loving the AI community. It is one of those communities where there's just a lot of sharing, a lot of learnings, and you can't, I was telling someone, you can't even have imposter syndrome because no one is an expert, right? So I think that's part of the reason why there's so much confidence in the sharing aspect of it. There's no room for judgment. People are experimenting, people are sharing what works, what doesn't work, and I think it's amazing that we're lifting each other.
That's really cool. Now, one of the things you like to talk about is a more strategic and authentic human approach to AI. And I think that that's been a little bit of this kind of juxtaposition between AI and implementation. I personally see a lot of people expecting this magic silver bullet, or on the other side of the spectrum, great fear of this silver bullet that's going to come in and take their positions or take away their work. And I think anybody that's gotten deep into this knows it's a little bit different. I think maybe getting into the authenticity, the humanity of it. First of all, where have we gone wrong with AI that's not something that we lean into right off the bat?
I don't want to start with where we've gone wrong because I think you put it, you positioned it correctly in that it is a spectrum.
Right.
People are in different parts of that spectrum. There are those that are leaning in so hard, right? They believe in this and they infuse their work, daily work with AI. And then there are those who are scared of it, scared so much that they're ignoring it. And what I want to tell people is wherever you are in that spectrum, have grace and empathy and respect for where you are. And for where others are in that spectrum, because some of these AI decisions could be very personal decisions. Like, for example, I always give this example. My husband is a right leg amputee from childhood cancer.
Right, okay.
And he is also a published author. So he has reservations about using AI for writing in his books because he has some unique ideas and he doesn't want to share those unique ideas with AI because he fears that somebody else will be able to write the next set of novels with his ideas. But at the same time, as a right leg amputee, he cherishes and values all the innovation happening in AI, specifically in robotics, because it could change the way people work and live, especially for those with disabilities, right? So there is a spectrum even within an individual in very specific use cases.
But don't you think his fear about his intellectual property getting used by AI is actually a legitimate one based off some of the things that we've seen?
I think it is legitimate because I think part of the challenge here is lack of trust right now.
Or lack of clarity about terms of service.
Clarity. Yes, that's right. You know, we need a little bit more transparency on how the models work, you know, what is being stored, how it's being used, how it's being trained. And quite honestly, I'm hearing things like, you know, just like the human mind, we don't know how it works. We don't know how AI works. If you hear things like that, then your radar is up, right? You can't automatically build trust when there's a lot of uncertainty. So I think the fear is coming from the unknown. And speaking of the unknown, my guidance to people is, regardless of where you are in the spectrum, get over the unknown and start understanding AI to the extent that you could spend some time with it, right? Because when we have a certain level of understanding, then we can make decisions, you know, the right decisions for ourselves, for our families, society, our business, the world, versus relying on others to influence our decisions. And those other people may or may not have the same values as we do.
Right. I would actually take a turn on it, though, and I would go back at the developers of these various LLMs and say the more human strategic approach is to offer that transparency so we can better understand what the probabilities are they're using to create some of this language. So I think that's like where a lot of the challenge to me is the uncertainty is fostered in many cases by Silicon Valley and the tech startups. And candidly, I would say, too, that part of the trust issue we're having is created by the overhype.
Yeah, I think there's some legitimacy to what you're saying, right? But I don't want to say that there isn't conversation in the responsible AI end of the spectrum. I think right now it's kind of getting overwhelmed by all of the innovation conversations because there's so much on the other side that conversations around trust, safety, transparency are kind of getting overwhelmed and overshadowed by all these other conversations. Just as an example, you know, Anthropic with Claude, they're doing a lot of things around.
It's a great model.
Yeah,
it's a great model.
Understanding it, right? You know, understanding
I don't know
how it works.
Anybody who uses Claude that ends up saying GPT is better all the time. I mean, they always end up using Claude, you know, at least in some cases. It's just amazing. But yes, go to your point.
No, but I love your comment on Claude. I am a big fan of Claude. I love.
Me too. I barely use GPT anymore. Yeah.
I only wish that Claude has web browsing capabilities, but I can get around that by using Perplexity.
Yeah.
Enabling Claude, right?
I mean, isn't that this is what I like, is the very human approach to AI. It's like we don't have a tool. We use what makes sense for the moment.
That's right.
Which is going to bring us to Apple at some point, because I think what they just did is going to actually be really, it's going to turn everything on its head. But the more I dive into what their approach is. But let's get back to that whole responsibility conversation. I actually see that conversation a lot, but it's happening privately in the enterprise. And I don't see companies that are looking at adopting and associations that are looking at adopting, and even government, without those responsibility measures put into place and thinking about how this is going to be implemented and putting in the, shall we say, the guardrails that would be necessary, especially considering that they don't trust the vendors to do it.
Yeah, I think there's not enough conversation and not enough guidelines, right? And as some of your listeners might know, what is that? The Microsoft LinkedIn Work Index report said that 75% of knowledge workers, and there were 31,000 people surveyed, are now using AI. Almost half of them started using it 6 months ago, and then 78% are bringing their own AI to work without the knowledge or approval of their employer.
Hello, Shadow IT.
Right? It's like, SaaS sprawl all over again, and now it's AI sprawl, right? But this, I think, if those stats are, relatively true and pervasive, that should be a wake-up call for companies, right?
Well,
If
also,
we're not, go ahead.
well, also, like if you consider some of the use cases we're talking about, we're not talking about them deploying AI to read the entire database. More often than not, it's Grammarly Go or, gosh, Google's not giving me the answer. I'm just going to ask ChatGPT on my phone right here.
That's right. That's right. If people are already bringing this stuff to work and we don't give them guidelines, we don't give them basic training for how to use, where to use.
Say, don't use it ever or you'll be fired.
Well, that's one end of the spectrum, right? But
you see it, right? Yeah.
Yes, there are some industries that are banning the use of AI, right? But when people don't understand those guardrails, when they don't understand when and how to use and what they need to do to the data, then it's a wild, wild west. And I think it
totally
exposes companies to a lot of risks, intentional or unintentional security risks, privacy risks, the brand. We're trying to build trust with our own customers, and if something happens and we lose the trust, it's so hard to earn trust back.
Yeah. Now I've kind of pushed you a little bit on this topic, and I think it's been taken to a place where I think it's really good. But I want to ask you, we've kind of gotten into the nitty gritty. What's the vision? What do you really see like as the ideal state for the authentic human approach to AI?
Jeff, I lean in on trust quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And to build trust, to earn trust, that's more about human beings than machines, right? And human beings are very complex. And we need to meet people where they're at. And
yes.
Where you're at is different from where Liza Adams is at. Much like we built trust with online banking, built trust with app-based rideshare. 20 years ago, my mom said, "Don't get in a stranger's car." No way, Liza, don't do that. Now I'm looking at the number of stars to see if it's a good driver and, trying to get somebody to pick me up, stranger, and I'm paying them and I'm tipping them. Like, trust was built over time. And I think same thing with AI. We would need to build earn people's trust, and it will depend on use case. It will depend on the company, the brand that's giving us the service, and it will depend on the amount of control that we're willing to give it. So, I think brands that are already trusted have a leg up, right? So as an example, Apple's already in our phones. It already knows a lot of stuff about us.
Right.
Google's already in our email, right? Microsoft's already in our messaging. So we've already trusted them for some of these things, but it will be different in healthcare, right? Would we trust certain companies with our healthcare information? That's a whole different ballgame. So this is why I say AI will push marketers, businesses to be strategic and more authentically human.
Boy,
all radars are up.
I am so tempted to dive into the Apple conversation because I just have a lot of thoughts, and particularly why I think they're going to be the ones to bring trust in. Let's just keep going first. One of the things that I did want to talk to you about was the human connection, and obviously you just touched on that quite a bit. So with the human connection, it's ironic that we're using AI in so many places. When you look at social networking, one of the huge complaints, and you and I were talking about LinkedIn, and this is one of my complaints with it, is that the algorithm prevents me from seeing the people I want to see. I think that's true in a lot of places, and it's endemic, right? And we understand why they have the algorithm. We understand it's a monetization thing, and yes, it is a business, and they have every right to do it. But that being said, we've kind of lost some of the human connection, and now we're on a trend connection. And that's not necessarily the same thing. It can be, but it's not necessarily the same thing. And when you hear people complain about social networking today, that is one of the primary complaints, is that they've lost the humanity. They've lost the unification of it. It's divided us. It's put us into like weird little interests, and they reinforce our interests rather than bringing us together. Can you talk about how you could see AI really kind of driving that connection rather than making us more benign, if you would, or more separated? I don't know how to say that right, but you get my gist.
I got it. I got it. This is, again, one of those ironies with AI, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. Ironically, like I said, AI will force us to be more human. Mm-hmm. And there's this digital hunger paradox that when we engage in more digital media, we're always in front of a screen, engaging just in text. We don't see human beings. Our hunger for authentic human connections actually go up. And we saw this during COVID, right? Like, humans are meant to connect. We figured out how to have birthday parties with car parades, right? We figured out how to have campfires by having like little pods of families around a campfire. So we are just naturally, inherently driven to connect with each other. And I think with technology, with chatbots, with digital screens, it will force us, our values of wanting to connect with human beings will go up. So this podcast right here, I'm looking at you. Although it's a digital screen, we know that this is a human connection.
Right. Yeah, right? We don't have any avatars going, I promise people.
This is Liza Adams, pores and all.
No synthesia.
That's right. Like, even in Slack, we don't see the human beings, but those are authentic human connections. Events, in my opinion, are going to rise. I've been to a number of events this year, and the energy was super amazing. And I was actually telling somebody, like, in the world of marketing, AI is going to have a hard time mimicking experiences. It can mimic text and audio and summarize things, but mimicking human experiences, those are hard, right? So when you see a football stadium filled with people all singing Sweet Caroline, that experience is just awesome, right? Like, what AI will be able to create that and recreate that for us today? And I say today, because who knows down the road, right?
Yeah, I was at an Orioles game yesterday with a business contact, one of my former clients, and they were singing "Thank God It's a Country Boy," and I'm like, I don't connect. I'm just kidding. No, but they did do that. I was like, what is wrong with you, Baltimore? What is wrong with you? But forgive me, the humor is just not needed. But one of the things that you're talking about, this human connection, it's interesting because during the pandemic, one of the things that we saw a lot of is outdoor activity clubs. People really getting together and running together or biking together. All these types of volleyball things, pickleball really took off. I mean, it's just on and on and on, this human connection that we're craving so much. And it's ironic that it's happened in this era of everything being connected. And I do see that in some ways AI may cause that. I don't subscribe. I know people are using it for connectivity with chat, and there's a fear of a her scenario where we find our digital intellectual and maybe spiritual mates via the algorithm. But in the end, there's going to be a big empty with that. I can't imagine that's satisfying in the end. I do see it driving us more towards each other, because if every answer is right, and that's the ideal state for AI, and God, let's hope it gets better, and it gets there, right? I mean, we all want it to be better. I just see us wanting to be around the quirky weirdness that we all are.
Machines or human beings, we have our quirks, right? And even what you just said there, if everything is right, the funny thing about that statement is, well, who says what's right? Who says what's true?
Probability.
Christopher Penn or others have said, there's these two camps: the world is flat and the world is round. The people that say that the world is flat, hey, that's their truth. The people that say that the world is round, that's their truth, right? So who says what's true? So
I was relieved to hear, though, that Kyrie Irving walked back the the world is flat thing. And he said, I'm just learning still. I'm a young man. He said that this week. I'm like, oh, that's good, Kyrie. That's good. All right. Let's move to a little more of a tactical thing. And, obviously AI with answer engines is one of the more directional areas that everybody seems to think it's moving, and it makes sense. Even the Apple integration this week, which Google will certainly follow suit and match with Android, is seeing ChatGPT, but also eventually Claude and Gemini will be integrated into the iPhone, and Siri will be able to access the app, and you can ask Siri and get a specific answer. And so we see that with Gemini now on Google. We're seeing it with Perplexity and its answer engine model. How is that going to change the way we as businesses try to get our ideas into search? Because search is not search anymore. Now, like all this keyword stuffing, no, it's over, right? Yeah. I mean, it's been over for a while, but to you, my friend.
All right. So I've done a lot of thinking in this area because, as you know, I'm a marketer, right? And we're in the business of communication and building trust.
Right.
And, all that keyword stuffing, all those loopholes, like we were tricking people, if you want to be honest with it, right? Because we were tricking the algorithms, we were trying to
playing the game. We were playing the game.
Right? We're playing the game.
It was the game put in front of us, and we played it.
Exactly. Now, I think the game is back to basics, be an awesome human being, and then be an awesome marketer.
Right.
Because what that really means, in my mind, there's 5 things that we need to do. The first thing is so deeply understand that customer and create highly, highly relevant content.
Yeah.
Not just keywords, but look for intent. That our content, our brand, our products, and our thought leadership content, product content is so good and relevant that even Google cannot ignore it. ChatGPT can't ignore it, and Perplexity can't ignore it. They would have to serve it up and cite the source, which is us. Right? If we don't do that, we won't get cited, our content won't get served up, we lose the opportunity to get in front of that customer or potential customer. So that's one of the things. The second thing in my mind is the rise of PR. So for anyone that has thought, I know.
I'm in DC. It's like the PR capital of the world, man. I mean, I can't walk outside with running into a flak.
So the rise of PR, for anyone who thought that PR is a cost center, change the thinking, right? This is going, it is, I talk a lot about trust. PR is about being in the right places that people trust and us engaging in those places, whether it's in media outlets that are trusted. Oh, by the way, these media outlets are going to be the ones used to train the model. So if we're not in those trusted sources, then how is our content going to be inserted into the models? We need to be in these communities, in these the social influencers that are highly trusted by our customers. So be everywhere that's trusted, and we have a better shot at getting into the models. The third thing, go ahead. Were you going to say something?
No. Go ahead.
Okay. The third thing in my mind is we can't stop with text. Have to go into audio, video, more immersive experiences, because AI is going to get super good at understanding video. And video is awesome for, storytelling, sharing a vision, showing before and after scenarios, or demonstrations. So I think there's going to be a resurgence in the video era.
Oh, I think it's all video now. I mean, like, wow. Right. Just look how TikTok's just wiping everybody up right now.
That's right. And then the fourth thing, it's going to get super hard to get a customer or prospect to come to our website, given what I just said, right?
Right.
The search engines or AI is going to be able to serve up really concise answers, and the probability of them clicking to get to our site is lower. But when we do get someone to come to our site, we got to cherish these people.
Right. First party contact matters more than it ever has before. There's no, we can just stuff the barrel again,
That's right. That's right. Like if they get to our website, my gosh, these guys are highly, highly qualified. They consume their content that's personalized for them. Our website better not just be an informational site or an engagement site. This thing better be an experience site. Serve them up content that's highly personalized because we already know so much about them.
Right. And make it more than one factor. Like, hey, Liza, you're in Denver. We have wonderful stores in Denver. Make it more than one factor. Let's get a little richer,
Yeah, let's do like a choose your own adventure, right? Or maybe the website becomes a doorway to a community where they can actually interact with human beings, or a doorway to podcasts and webinars and online events, those types of things. Back to the human aspect of this.
Right, 100%.
The last thing is around diversifying. So we can't put all or most of our eggs in the Google basket or in the search basket.
Right.
That's dangerous, right? So
it's a mistake too. I mean, everybody's not on there anymore. I mean, that's
absolutely. There's no guarantee that the start of a buyer's journey begins with a Google search.
No, that is actually, what's the right way to say this? I would argue, and tell me what you think.
Yeah.
When somebody says that to me, they actually generationally stamp themselves. You know what I mean? They date themselves, literally.
That's right. Yeah, it could start with chat and AI, right? Chat GPT or Perplexity. It could start in a community.
On the gram, right? It could start in Slack.
It's Slack, exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Telegram, WhatsApp, all of them. It really depends on where you are, too.
That's right. That's right. It depends on where you are, depends on the use case, depends on the industry. So I think those 5 things, and this is maybe not further down the road, but it might come sooner than later. We might have a digital twin, especially with agentic AI, where it is now taking action on our behalf. So these websites need to not just optimize for humans, but it needs to optimize for our digital twin.
So. We're getting dangerously close to that Apple conversation.
Oh, I know.
All right, let's take a break really quick, and then we'll dive into it.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, everybody, we're back, and thank you for that commercial break from the Marketing Podcast Network. Liza, okay, we keep talking about Apple, and one of the questions we wanted to talk about was the backlash against AI, right? And I think we kind of got into that already. But really, what's the responsibility of brands to elevate the customer experience or that customer view of AI, or to see AI as something that is part of a larger thing that they're into investing in, right? Which is what we all want. And I think even the customers, me as a customer, wants that. What's your thinking on that step, and what do we have to do? Let's assume that tech companies are going to be tech companies and just sell their next product roadmap. What do brands have to do?
Yeah, and you're digging into the Apple one.
Yeah, we're inevitably going to end in Apple because they're probably providing the use case to do it right.
Yeah. And when we think about brands, brands have to be authentic to what they're all about and their mission.
Right.
Apple's mission is about providing better experiences using their innovative hardware, software, and services.
Right.
And then OpenAI is on the other end of that spectrum, which is more about artificial intelligence to benefit all of humanity.
Theoretically. I don't know if that's really part of their mission anymore, but yes. At least it is for Anthropic.
Those are the stated missions, right?
But that's all inside baseball. Let's move on. I agree. Let's go.
So when you think about Apple and what they've announced recently, it is
this week.
This week, earlier this week.
Yeah, for those of you that are listening to this podcast, you're probably getting this a few weeks afterwards. Liza and I are talking literally days after Apple announced Apple Intelligence.
Yes. So if we think about what they announced this week, it is directly in line. It is spot on with what their mission is all about. It is about experiences, right? That privacy.
That's right.
That is their strength. Experiences, privacy, and basically the data.
Yeah.
The data that they have within our phones. They actually lean into what some might perceive as their weakness. So they're basically saying, oh, you don't have a large language model. You don't have, a big AI out there. But they basically said, but we have it in the phone. On-device AI is, in essence, where they leaned in on. And they layered on top of that the ability to provide a lot more privacy because it is not going into the cloud, which is a very different strategy from those that build frontier models like OpenAI.
Yes, there's a podcast. I don't know if you're familiar with it. It's called This Day in AI. And it's these two crazy Australian developers, and they broke down the Apple AI announcement. And one of the things that I thought was really interesting about it was Apple does actually have their language model, but it's a different model. It's smaller and it's masked. They're using GPT as almost a front where they'll be blaming GPT if something goes wrong, which is horrible. I really think OpenAI got a really raw deal on this one. Not good for them as a long-term enterprise play in this. And I think what Apple has done is they've put themselves in a position to connect apps on their phone, on the OS, where, for example, do you have kids? I know it's a terrible question to ask in the middle of the podcast. So do I, right? Yeah. So we all know our kids have their own activities. Let's say you have to have a special app for whatever your kid's doing. My kid's at the School of Rock. Maybe I have to use a School of Rock app to figure out where their concert is. I would literally ask Siri, when is Leo's concert? What time do I have to pick them up? And where do I have to go? Also, where are the nearest Chipotle's near the venue so I can make sure to swoop up and get that kid fed so they're not a hangry monster? Any parent can identify with these kind of complex 4 tasks. Siri can never do that now, right? With Apple Intelligence, it will be able to, because it'll be able to pair, especially if developers take to this the way Apple had them take to the store beforehand. They will tag their own apps with what their primary intent is, and then Siri can tag the primary intent apps one by one based off the task. It's brilliant. It's freaking brilliant, and it's brilliant in the sense that it really does what Apple is so good at. It's their DNA. It's that customer experience. We don't care what the LLM can do. We care about what you want to do with your life, and we're going to pair the AI apps and help you figure that out. That's really what people are looking for, I think, and I don't think that they're getting that right now from these, from many of the vendors. I feel like there's a lot of spatter that's thrown against the wall, and what sticks, and what doesn't, well, maybe we'll sweep it under the rug. Hello, Microsoft GPTs, goodbye. I mean, to me, that's the real Apple thing. I'm totally riffing. I'm so sorry if I'm babbling, but you're so spot on too with the security thing. Like, they understand how important security is. I mean, the FBI can't even break into your phone these days without having the warrant. And so, the FBI is trying to crack into your phone to try to break a case. How good is Apple that they're protecting your data, that can't happen? I mean, I don't know about you. I trust them.
I do trust them. I'm a longtime Apple user. Everything in our house starts with an I. Part of this is, I hate to be provocative, but I will be.
Let's go. Let's do it.
I can tell you're a big fan of Apple, and so am I, right?
Right.
But this doesn't say that there is no place for those that build frontier models and large language models.
Right. So there's definitely a role for that, right?
There is a role for that, right? Because what Apple is building within the device can do narrower applications. There's less intelligence. It can't do as much as what the large frontier models can do in the cloud.
Right.
So at least in today's environment, it's catering to the consumers, to normal people like you and me that use our phones on a daily basis. OpenAI and the others that create large frontier models are catering more to the enthusiast, right? The technologist.
Or the enterprise.
To the enterprise, yes. But there's a gap in between, right?
100%.
There's technology adoption cycle, and Jeffrey Moore's crossing the chasm. How do we get to the early majority? guess what? Apple is actually helping these large frontier model companies to get into the early majority. This is the insertion point to build trust, get people to actually using AI so that they can understand it. Because the way that we're using AI today, before Apple did this, somebody would go into Chat GPT and there's a conversation box and you're just supposed to know what to do. That's super hard for people
No.
to grok,
No.
right?
Right. Yeah.
So,
But
yeah, go
I
ahead.
will. I'm going to counter that, though. I'm going to say, let's say Apple's right. Okay. Now we're getting into the whole. Man, we're having a Friday afternoon on coffee at a coffee shop talking smack about Apple. Okay. So let's say they're right. We know Google is going to follow suit. Now you're OpenAI. You've lost half the market because Google is probably not going to put you on the phone, or they're going to make it hard for you to be in the store, right? You're going to have to earn your downloads. You're not going to get integrated into, hey, Google. They're going to put Gemini everywhere they possibly can first. That's hard for Anthropic. That's hard for Perplexity. That's hard for OpenAI. That's 50% of the market. So now you're relying on basically that Apple integration. And Apple has been pretty upfront that they're not necessarily wed to ChatGPT. It's not a financial relationship. ChatGPT is going to have to become the primary, and it is because they're first, but they're going to have to dominate that store. They're going to have to be the app, if that makes sense. It's going to be back to the App Store model. And I don't know if that's really where OpenAI wants to be. I don't know if they have a choice, because if we're really looking from the consumer marketplace that the phone is the venue for AI, if that's really the personal digital assistant, the one that we're all talking about with hugging face, hugging bear, hugging, I don't know what it is, hugging poo dolls, hugging face. But you know what I mean? Just if that's the personal digital assistant, and Rabbit's not going to win, these LLMs aren't going to win, it's going to be via the phone, and big tech wins this. Now they're relegated to secondary technology provider.
I wouldn't go that far. And I think it's largely because the promise of what these large language models can do.
We'll see.
It has limitations today, but scaling laws are basically telling us that, the capabilities are not hindered by, by power consumption or the amount of data. This thing can scale, right? And
Right.
people are saying that we can see AGI by the end of this decade. And I don't know how, what
I don't
AGI
know.
looks
I don't know.
Right?
I don't know.
So
It depends on the very liberal definition of AGI. Let's leave it at that.
No.
I don't know if it's Alan Turing's AGI. You know what I mean?
So I'm not ready to put all of my money on red or on black on this thing. I honestly do not believe that there's going to be a single winner.
100% right. Yeah.
In the world of AI. All of these players have distinct missions, very distinct missions, right? Very distinct capabilities and strengths and weaknesses. And I'm not pitting them against each other. I feel like they're operating to serve a very specific segment of the market.
Sure.
At least today. I think there will be some convergence.
Has to be. There's too many of them, right?
There's too many of them, right? There needs to be some convergence.
Mistral, on and on and on, right? Just keep
That's
going.
right. Yeah. And I do believe that the company or companies that are more transparent, that become a little bit more human than they are today, have a much better shot at gaining trust from people like you and me.
Yeah, and I think actually that's a great way to kind of work our way towards the end of this, because neither you nor I, even though my mom was an astrologer, so I think I might have a leg up on you. But no, really, all jokes aside, nobody's got the crystal ball here, right? We don't know what's going to happen. But I do like that idea that the more we lean into focusing on our experience, our trust, how we treat our customers, how we treat our vendors, employees, whatever our relationship might be at work and in real life, the better it's going to be for us. And, the way we use these tools to foster that sense of building trust and relationships is going to be absolutely essential. So yeah. I love that.
Well, if we think about marketers, our jobs just got harder because now we have to balance convenience with privacy. We have to balance personalization with transparency, with balance innovation with ethics, and then balance automation with human touch. My God, like not that
We're going to have to learn boundaries. We're going to have to learn boundaries.
So, when people say, hey, anyone can be a marketer, try it now.
Oh my God.
It just got harder.
Isn't that the worst when people are like, I could do that better. I could use ChatGPT. You're going to be replaced. You're like, good luck with that, bud. Go ahead and replace me. I'd like to see where you are in a year. Call me? No.
We'll see what AGI does.
Oh my God. My God. That's good. This is very good. How can people find you, my friend?
Find me on LinkedIn, Liza Adams, and you can also visit my website, growthpath.net. And I'm on several Slack channels, so CMO communities and marketing communities, AI communities, so you could find me in a lot of places. Follow me.
Follow Liza. And thank you, everybody, for listening and tolerating another week of bad dad jokes from Jeff. But if you did like this episode, all jokes aside, punch that like button, subscribe, share it with your friends, send us feedback, and we are out of here.
Happy Father's Day.